Staff and students, I'm going to spend the next few minutes discussing the very important topic of school violence. Specifically, I am going to discuss violence that has been perpetrated on schools by students. School violence, though rare, has been a part of your psyche and training since you started kindergarten. No matter what grade you are in, students now have to train for and worry about school violence, much like the veteran teachers who were students of the 80s had to worry about nuclear war. Newer teachers experienced the rash of school shootings in the late 90s and have had to deal with the aftermath as students and as teachers. Soon, all of us will be doing more specific training in addition to our normal intruder drills in order to learn and become more confident to respond if we are ever to encounter a violent intruder in our school. Today, however, we are going to focus on something even more effective than an efficient response, and that is the power to prevent. Yes, in some degree, we all have the power to prevent a violent event from ever taking place at our school. In his book, School Shooter, Dr. Peter Langman studied 41 school shootings and found that most school shooters leave a trail of warning signs that were not noticed or responded to. Dr. Langman cites in the book Violence and Security on Campus from Preschool through College the following. In the aftermath of virtually any high-profile episode of school violence, much of the focus and finger-pointing surrounds the warning signs that were repeatedly missed or ignored by parents, teachers, peers, and law enforcement officials. Dr. Langman further states that warning signs consist of actions and behaviors rather than specific characteristics of individuals. Behaviors are often attack-related behaviors. A key aspect to these attack-related behaviors is what is known as leakage. Leakage is simply the leaking of plans to other people. Leakage has been identified in nearly all violent acts perpetrated or planned for schools. Leakage can take many forms and may be direct or indirect. Unfortunately, even the clearest leakage may fail to generate intervention. Here are some examples of leakage from past school shooting incidents. Michael Carneal told students, quote, he was going to come to school and start shooting people. Andrew Golden announced, quote, you are all going to die. Mitchell Johnson told peers, quote, tomorrow you will find out if you live or die. The question remains, why despite these clear threats did no one intervene? People may have thought the students were too young to commit murder. Sometimes the students making the threats were considered weird and known for saying strange things. Sometimes shooters made direct threats, but when questioned by friends, denied actual intent. And finally, people may assume anyone intending to commit mass murder won't announce it publicly. School shooters have shown themselves to be different from other killers in that they often leave a trail of leakage. School shooters have attempted to or actually recruited peers to help them. They have asked for peers to provide supplies such as firearms and ammo. They have kept peers safe by warning them of their intentions or plans. Sometimes school shooters' comments to others are indirect. They may refer to school rampages as cool. They may state, quote, somebody should do that here. They may be fascinated by and have an unhealthy interest in school shootings. Where can leakage be found? It can be found in schoolwork. It can be found on social media, in conversations with peers, and it can be found at signs at home. The Safe Schools Initiative, prepared by the Secret Service, released the following key findings in 2002 after 37 school shootings from 1974 to 2000 were studied. Incidents of targeted violence and school safety in school rarely were sudden impulsive acts. Prior to most incidents, other people knew about the attacker's idea and or plan to attack. Most attackers did not threaten their targets directly prior to advancing their attack. There is not an accurate or useful profile of students who engaged in targeted school violence. Most attackers engaged in some behavior prior to the incident that caused others concern or indicated a need for help. Most attackers had difficulty coping with significant losses or personal failures. Moreover, many had considered or attempted suicide. Many attackers felt bullied, persecuted, or injured by others prior to the attack. Most attackers had access to and had used weapons prior to the attack. Most attackers demonstrated some interest in violence through movies, video games, books, or other media. Most attackers had no history of prior violent or criminal behavior. In many cases, other students were involved in some capacity. Despite prompt law enforcement responses, most attacks were stopped by means other than law enforcement. Following the Parkland and Santa Fe high school shootings in 2018, the Secret Service followed up the Safe Schools Initiative with a second study. This study examined 41 violent school attacks which took place from 2008 to 2017 and found that there is no profile of a student attacker, nor is there a profile for the type of school that has been targeted. Attackers usually had multiple motives, the most common involving a grievance with classmates. Most attackers used firearms, and firearms were most often acquired at home. Most attackers had experienced psychological, behavioral, or developmental symptoms. Half of the attackers had interest in violent topics. All attackers experienced social stressors involving their relationships with peers and/or romantic partners. Nearly every attacker experienced negative home life factors. Most attackers were victims of bullying. Most attackers had a history of school disciplinary action, and many had prior contact with law enforcement. All attackers exhibited concerning behaviors. Most elicited concern from others, and most communicated their intent to attack. Some of you may know that our district has had 2 potential threats which were investigated in the past week. One potential threat at the middle school caused significant disruption and attendance issues, and a second incident was investigated at the high school that caused minimal disruption, but led to the need for further educate and how to deal with potential threats. In both situations, a potential threat was reported and our district safety protocols were followed. Behavioral risk assessments were performed, and in both cases it was determined there was not a credible risk. What you and teachers will discuss today is the importance of reporting as well as avoiding the harmful effects of spreading rumors and half-truths and causing undue panic. Thank you for your attention, and now your seminar teacher will lead family circle discussions. I encourage you to listen, be honest, and participate.